Hello everyone, Sen here. Today we're going to be refactoring our code and we're going to be splitting most of the functions that are contained in our main.c into their own files. So one of the things that we did on the first episode was create these two variables as global, and we've stuck with that and we've been creating more global variables, but this is not a good idea. It's kind of bad practice too. And it's just going to get complicated if we start using those variables outside of this file. So instead, SDL provides this argument app state, and here you're going to see the app may optionally assign a pointer to pointer app state. This pointer will be provided on every future call to the other entry points to allow the application state to be preserved between functions without the app needing to use a global variable. So basically, this is going to be our equivalent of having a global variable. As you can see here, it's provided to app iterate, app event, and app quick. So the first thing we are going to do is take this app init function and just cut it from here and come over here and create a new file. We also are going to create a new folder called SDL, where we're going to save all the related files. And in this case, we're going to create the init.c file. We can paste here our function. As you can see, there's many errors. That's because we don't have SDL. But instead of including it up here, we're going to create a header file. This header file is going to be called common.h. And here we can just say include SDL3 and include the header file right here, include common.h. Perfect. That fixes all the issues with SDL, but we still have the issue of these variables that we defined on the global scope on the other file. So now instead of having them as global variables, we're going to use this app state thing. So firstly, we want to go into common.h to define a type. This type is going to be called type define struct app state. This is going to be the content of the app state struct, a window, a renderer, the last tick, the current tick, and the delta time. So what we are going to do now is go back to our init.c, and here we are going to do the following. First, we're going to create a new variable called state, like this, variable state of type app state, and we're going to allocate memory to it. So we have memory allocated to put new items on here. So what we're going to do now too is just say that this app state, the pointer to app state equals state. This way, any changes we make to state are going to be reflected into app state, and we are going to be able to use them in the other functions. So now instead of having window here, we would do state window, and now you can see the error goes away. We just have to do the same for all the occurrences that have errors here too, and right here. And you may think we didn't include entities or entity counts into our app state. I'm not gonna go into much detail of why we are not going to be including those in there, but let's just say that it's just a mess. So instead of doing that, we're going to go into our entity.h, and here we are going to define entities and entities count, and we're going to have them as externs. So these two variables are available to the files we import our entity h to. And now we can go back to our main scene we can delete these these two variables from here, just so we remember that those are not there anymore. And what else do we have here? We have many things. So let me check my init.c and see if there's any errors. Yeah, we have this error. This is because we haven't included our entities entity.h. Great, that fixes the error. These two are defined now. But when we check here the error, a value of type int cannot be assigned to an entity. So that's because init player is not defined. So what we have to do now is just include this init player that is in the player file. So let's include player.h. Now the error should go away. Perfect. Great. Now we have our app init working, but we have many other functions to change. So let's go over there. So now we have these three functions. They work more or less together. So first we have the app iterate. So let's create a new file called iterate.h. No, sorry, .c. And in this file, we want to have this. So we want to also include common.h. So we have the SDL available here. And yeah, we would want to pass this app state into the update function and also into the render function. No, I'm not going to do that now because we are going to delete these two functions and change them to another name. So let's leave that there. And let's go here back into our main file and take this render function. And let's create another file over here. So render.c. We're gonna paste our function here, and we could call it, instead of render, app render. And this has to take an argument of that void app state. And this app state, we can do the following. So we have our app state available here. So first we need to include our common.h. Second, we have to define, yeah, this. We're going to do a type cast like this. So what does this mean? We're saying that the variable state equals app state, but as an app state pointer. So basically the type of void is void, but we want to tell the program that the actual type of the argument is app state, because that's what we defined before. So now that we have that, we can just come here and say state render, and same here, state render. And here we have entities and entities. Oh, sorry, I forgot one. And we have here entities and entities count. And as we saw before, we can just include entity.h. And that's about it. Perfect. Great. So now we have the app render function. And let's create a header file for it, because we're going to export this function. So that would be edit render.h. Yeah, we create the file, and then on here we say this and pragma once. We have to remember to include pragma once on all our header files. I think I forgot it here, so in common.h we have to include it too. Perfect. Now we're exporting the app render function from the render.c file, and we can just move these two things from here and just to include render.h, and in render.h include those two things. Perfect. Now it's better. Great. We have the render function working too. What else do we need? Let's go back to our main function. We have the update function, so let's take that too. Create a new file called update.c, paste the function. Let's change the name to update too, and we're going to do the same. We create a header for it, update.h. Here we include .h. We do pragma once, and I think we need something else. Yeah, we need to remember to say void upstate. Copy it from here, paste it here, and we are going to do the same as before. We just say tab type. Oh, I didn't include the header file, so to include update.h. We're going to do the same as before. So, and now we need to change this to state last state, state current seek. Here, no, here, here, and here, and here. Great. So now we need to just include entities into our header file too. So include entity. In fact, we should just include entities into our common file. So we can just do this because we're using it everywhere. So we can just come into the other header file, delete entities from here, and yeah, perfect. We don't have any errors. Great. And now we can we have the iterate function, and what we're going to do is create iterate.h, and on here we're going to include, oh, sorry, forgot, pragma once, include common.h, and include update.h and render.h. Great. Now that we have these two, we can just come here and change this to include iterate.h, and finally, so much things, we can just come here and just say update upstate and app render upstate. Great. I think we are done with app iterate, and we can go back to our main scene. Delete these lines. We only have left app event and app quit, so we are going to do that too. We are going to copy the macros later, or maybe we just ditch them out because they're not doing that much, to be honest. So let's create a new file called events.c. Paste this in here, and include common.h. We don't need anything else. And oh, I created it in the wrong directory, so let's move it here. And lastly, we go back to main C, and we take this, we create cleanup.c, and over here we of this. Just need to include common.ph. Working perfect. Now it's working, so we could do the same as we've been doing before. This, then here do state render, state window, state render, and state window. Great. This quit entities macro, it's not erroring out. I don't know why, but obviously we haven't defined it, so it's going to error out. So after doing all that, our main file looks like this. We can just end things up by just first we need these two things. These two things, as we read from the SDL wiki, have to be defined just in one file. So we're going into our init.c, and instead of importing things here, we're just going to create an init.h. Paste this here. We also do pragma. Oh no, that's not what I want to do. Pragma once. And take all of the things that we imported here over there. Oh, like this. I think we don't need to specify that the file is outside of this folder. And I'd say, yeah, that's about it. So now we can just go back into our init file and include init.h. Perfect. And there's no errors. Great. Now let's go back to main.c. What are we missing? We defined these 5 variables. We have them in our app state pointer. Then we have these 4 macros that we are just going to not use. We're just going to copy the actual for loops and paste them here. To be honest, it's just going to be easier. We're not saving that much space, and since we have a file for each render, update, iterate method, there's no need to make it like abstract it more. So we could just have here state render, and we delete this. So delete this. Perfect. I'm going to go back here. Now the update one, so that would be update C here. Use here state delta time. Where else? In our cleanup code. Yeah. Working up code, we also need this. So what we can see, we copy this, paste this here, leave some space. What am I missing? Nothing. Since we don't pass any arguments to this, we don't need to say state anywhere. So we just need to do the last one, and that's handle events. We're just going to go into events.c and paste this here, just so we have it somewhere, because I'm going to great. I'm going to delete the main.c file. So now we have all of these things, and I would say that we are already done. We can just delete this and delete the file. I'm not gonna delete it now, but I'll delete it later. So there's one thing that's bugging me, and that's that we had here SDL image, and I don't remember importing SDL image into any of these functions. So maybe I imported it for some reason and we never used it later. Also, let's take this in here. But I think this looks good to me. We have no errors. Well, that's how it looks. So we should try to compile our program. So before we do that, let's check our makefile. And as you can see, we are only compiling the files inside of source. And now we have a new folder called SDL. So we will need to include that too. And we can escape line breaks like this. Yeah, we're going to include SDL, the SDL folder too there. And let's try to compile and see what we get. Great, entity.h not satisfied. Okay, great. So we had to specify where entity.h is. So let's do it like this. On init.h. Oh, we don't need this in init.h. Yeah, player.h is in the top folder too. So we get another error, undefined reference to entities on the cleanup. Okay, this makes sense. That's because we didn't create we created only a header file, but we didn't create the variables. So we are going to go into our entity h here. We're going to copy these two lines and create a new file. So we're going to create entity.c, delete the external word keyword, and we're going to include entity.h. We can assign a value here to entities count and make it 0, and let's try to rebuild it. And now our game is working. That's great. We made a huge refactor. We won't need the main C anymore, so let's take that out. We made a huge refactor. We cleaned our code, just splitting everything into smaller files and making it just easier to navigate. Now we can just go into our render file, and here we have our render, what we do on our render. Same for the update functions. Yeah, I think this is going to just make our life easier. So I know it's kind of a pain in the ass to refactor old code, but next episode we're going to be covering something more interesting for sure. So until then, see you.